Thomas was never one for grand parties or glamorous crowds. His life was quiet and predictable, filled with the routines of early morning coffee, late-night grading, and the occasional weekend hike. As a small-town teacher known solely for his dedication to his students, he had little connection to the world of glitz and glamour. So, when an invitation to an exclusive gala arrived, it left him both baffled and intrigued. Maybe just this once, he thought, it wouldn't hurt to step into a world so different from the simplicity of his own life. The invitation sparked something in him, a curiosity, a flicker of excitement. As the event drew near, he pulled out his best suit, a decade-old navy blue one that had accompanied him through more weddings and funerals than he could recall. He knew he wouldn't blend in with the high society crowd, but he hoped his appearance would at least be passable. For Thomas, the gala wasn't about mingling with the rich, it was about challenging himself to leave his comfort zone. On the night of the event, he paused in front of his mirror for a final check. The reflection staring back was that of a man weathered by time, with silver threads in his hair. But his eyes still held that flicker of youthful curiosity. Nervous yet excited, he left his small apartment and made his way to the opulent venue, determined to savor the evening, no matter how out of place he might feel. The moment he arrived, he was struck by the grandeur of the hall, illuminated by chandeliers that sparkled like constellations, casting a warm golden glow over the impeccably dressed guests. He hesitated at the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed by the splendor, but then took a steadying breath, reminding himself that he was there for a reason. He stepped forward, immersing himself in the glittering world of wealth and privilege. As he moved deeper into the hall, the feeling of being an outsider grew. Laughter echoed around him, smooth and polished, as waiters in immaculate uniforms glided through the crowd with trays of fine wine and hors d'oeuvres. The guests all seemed to fit seamlessly into this world, their designer attire and refined manners making them indistinguishable from the opulence around them. For Thomas, it was a sharp reminder of just how far he was from his small-town life. With every step, his discomfort intensified. He listened to snippets of conversations about stock markets, luxury vacations, and high-stakes business deals, topics that felt completely foreign to him. Determined not to appear out of place, he forced himself to smile and nod politely, but his attempts to join conversations only made him feel more isolated. Just as he was starting to regret accepting the invitation, his eyes landed on her. By the bar stood a woman in a striking red gown, her elegance commanding the attention of the room. It was Sophia Lancaster, a socialite famous for her sharp wit and even sharper tongue. She glanced his way, her eyes cold and assessing, as if trying to discern what someone like him was doing in a place like this. As her gaze swept over his outdated suit and hesitant smile, a look of amusement danced in her eyes. In her world, appearances were everything, and Thomas clearly fell short. With a smirk, she began to move toward him, ready to unleash her scathing wit. But what she didn't know was that Thomas held a secret, a truth that had the power to shatter the shallow facade around them and prove that real value lies far beyond appearances. In that glittering hall, amidst the laughter and luxury, she was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. She strode up to him, the sound of her heels echoing confidently against the marble floor. "A bit out of your depth, aren't you?" she remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. Thomas, caught off guard, managed a polite smile. "Just taking in the atmosphere," he replied, hoping to deflect her comment. But her eyes narrowed, her smirk deepening as she sized him up, her gaze lingering just long enough to make him feel small. "This isn't exactly a field trip," she added with a soft laugh, spinning on her heel before he could respond. A flush crept up Thomas's neck as her words echoed in his mind. He tried to brush it off, reminding himself that he had no reason to seek approval from strangers. Still, her dismissive tone clung to him. He turned his focus to the art lining the walls, the vibrant floral arrangements, and the gentle hum of the orchestra, hoping to lose himself in the beauty around him. But the sting of her words lingered. It wasn't long before he noticed the sidelong glances from other guests, the whispered exchanges that seemed to grow louder the longer he stood there. Whether or not they were talking about him, he couldn't say, but the air was thick with judgment, feeding his desire to disappear into the shadows. He kept telling himself that their opinions didn't matter, yet a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that maybe he truly didn't belong. As the night wore on, Thomas drifted toward the refreshment table, hoping a drink would steady his nerves. He had just picked up a glass of water when he heard that same voice behind him. "Still here?" she said, her tone laced with mock surprise. "I thought someone like you would have made a quiet exit by now. People like you don't tend to last long at these kinds of events." Her words stung, cutting deeper than he cared to admit. For a moment, he felt the urge to snap back, but he restrained himself. Instead, he met her gaze with quiet resolve, refusing to be drawn into her game. In that silence, something shifted within him. He realized he owed her no explanation, no attempt to prove his worth. Around them, laughter continued, oblivious to the unspoken tension. Thomas took a slow, steady breath and finally spoke, his voice calm and unwavering. "I'm here because I was invited," he said, holding her gaze, "not just as a guest, but by one of the event's key benefactors, a friend who personally asked me to attend." For a brief moment, her smug smile faltered. The nearby guests who had overheard the exchange turned their attention to Thomas, whispers spreading as they wondered who he truly was. Sophia's confidence wavered, her expression slipping into one of embarrassment as her assumptions unraveled. Trying to save face, she forced a laugh. "Well, I didn't mean to offend," she said, though her tone lacked any real sincerity. "It's just, this isn't the sort of place you'd expect to find a teacher." Thomas simply smiled, his composure unbroken. The tables had turned, and for the first time that evening, it was Sophia who felt out of place. Thomas saw right through her facade, recognizing that her arrogance was merely a shield for her insecurities. Despite her harsh words, he felt a flicker of sympathy but kept it hidden. With quiet determination, he met her gaze. "Perhaps it's time you stopped judging people by where they come from or the size of their bank account," he said softly. "You might discover that there's more to life than parties and appearances." His words hit her like a sudden gust of wind, throwing her off balance. She tried to brush them aside, but a small seed of doubt had been planted. Memories long buried surfaced, images of a younger Sophia, someone who once knew kindness and humility. She recalled a time before wealth and status had turned her heart cold, before she had learned to protect herself with sarcasm and superiority. There had been struggles in her past too, moments she had worked hard to forget. For a fleeting moment, shame washed over her. He was a man who had come from humble beginnings, standing unflinchingly in his own truth, while she had hidden behind a veneer of self-importance. She tried to shake off the unsettling thoughts, but they clung to her, tainting the pride she had once felt. Needing a moment to compose herself, Sophia retreated to the powder room, where she stared at her reflection in the gilded mirror. For the first time in years, the person looking back seemed like a stranger. Thomas's words had struck a chord, unearthing feelings she had long suppressed. The emptiness she had ignored for so long now gnawed at her, a stark reminder of the warmth and compassion she had sacrificed on her climb to the top. As she reapplied her lipstick, her hands trembled. She could continue to play the part of the poised socialite, but she now realized it was just a fragile mask, one that Thomas had effortlessly seen through. When she finally re-entered the hall, she was met with curious stares. Word had quickly spread about her encounter with the quiet man in the worn suit, igniting whispers and speculation. To her surprise, she found Thomas in an animated conversation with James Harland, the event's main benefactor and one of the city's most respected businessmen. The crowd's attention shifted. For the first time that evening, Sophia was no longer the center of the room's orbit. Thomas was. And as she watched, a pang of something unfamiliar struck her, a mix of regret and longing for something she couldn't quite name. James was a familiar face at these galas, not just for his considerable wealth, but also for his reputation for kindness. As Sophia made her way over, James noticed her and gave her a warm smile. "Sophia," he said. "I see you've already met my good friend Thomas." Sophia's heart sank. In that moment, she realized Thomas wasn't just another guest. He was someone James held in high regard, someone worthy of a personal invitation. Her embarrassment resurfaced as James placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder, drawing him into conversations with other attendees. The evening reached its crescendo when the event organizer took the stage, announcing that Thomas would be giving a speech. The room hushed instantly, all eyes turning toward him, curious about who he truly was and why he had been invited as an honored guest. Nervous but resolute, Thomas took a deep breath and stepped up. As he scanned the crowd, his gaze found Sophia, her expression caught somewhere between unease and reluctant admiration. Thomas began to speak, not about his accomplishments or material success, but about the values that guided him: humility, kindness, and the transformative power of helping others. He shared heartfelt stories of his students, children whose dreams he nurtured every day, and his commitment to giving them a brighter future. His words reverberated through the hall, creating a silence filled with something deeper than mere admiration. Sophia shifted uneasily, grappling with a mix of pride and a growing urge to apologize. Listening to Thomas, she couldn't ignore the weight of her earlier behavior. What had seemed like harmless mockery now felt shamefully petty. Yet, the thought of humbling herself in front of so many people felt like an insurmountable task. For a woman who had spent years perfecting her image, admitting she was wrong was not something that came easily. As Thomas concluded his speech to a rousing standing ovation, Sophia hesitated. Finally, she approached him, her smile strained. "Your speech, it was truly inspiring," she said, though even she could hear the hollowness in her own words. Thomas gave a simple nod, his eyes filled with quiet sincerity. "Thank you, Sophia," he replied softly, sensing the turmoil she was struggling to hide. He didn't linger on her discomfort, nor did he seek to punish her with his words. Yet, his calm acceptance only deepened the confusion in her heart. Sophia stood back as a throng of guests swarmed around Thomas, eager to shake his hand and express their admiration. In the span of a few moments, he had become the focal point of the evening. One by one, people congratulated him and inquired about his work, leaving Sophia on the sidelines, feeling her once unshakable confidence slip away. What had started as a night where she commanded the room's attention was ending with her standing in his shadow. The final blow came when she overheard a guest murmur Sophia could learn a thing or two from him. The remark stung, but deep down she couldn't deny its truth. As the crowd gradually dispersed, Thomas approached her again. This time, there was no condescension in his eyes, only a genuine understanding. For Sophia, it was a look that both disarmed and unsettled her, leaving her to grapple with the person she had become. "We all have something to learn, don't we?" Thomas said gently, offering her a chance to reflect. Now, with the crowd dispersed, Sophia found herself alone with Thomas in a quiet corner of the hall. For the first time, there were no onlookers, no masks. "I was wrong about you," she confessed, her voice barely audible. Pride, which had always shielded her, had finally crumbled, leaving only sincerity. "I thought respect was something people earned through status or accomplishments. But you don't need any of that." Thomas's eyes were warm, his expression kind. "Respect shouldn't be something anyone has to earn, Sophia. It's a gift we should give freely. Everyone has their own story, their struggles. Sometimes, all it takes is a bit of kindness to make a difference." His words lingered, resonating deeply within her. For the first time in years, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could change. Perhaps it wasn't too late to find a different path. Moved by their conversation, Thomas made a simple, unexpected offer. "Come visit my town someday," he said. "See the school where I work. Meet the kids. They're the reason I'm here tonight." Sophia hesitated. The idea of stepping into a world so different from her own was daunting, yet it stirred something in her. A yearning for authenticity, for connection. She found herself nodding slowly. I think I'd like that," she said, her voice steadier than before. Thomas smiled, recognizing the sincerity in her eyes. "Good," he replied. "There's a lot to learn from those who may lack wealth, but have a wealth of heart." With that, he turned to leave, leaving Sophia to contemplate the weight of his words. As the evening drew to a close, Thomas prepared to depart, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. His purpose at the gala had never been about accolades or recognition. It was about staying true to his values and sharing them with others. Sophia watched him go, a sense of longing and loss washing over her. In all the years she had spent surrounded by wealth and influence, she had never met someone like Thomas, someone so genuine, so unpretentious. As the noise of the gala faded into the background, she realized he had left behind something intangible, yet deeply impactful. In that moment, she knew meeting him had changed her life in ways she couldn't yet fully grasp. Later that night, back in his modest apartment, Thomas reflected on the evening's events. The simplicity of his surroundings felt like a comforting embrace after the extravagance of the gala. He thought of Sophia, of the transformation he had glimpsed in her. Her initial scorn had given way to curiosity, even respect. He could only hope that, perhaps, a small seed of change had been planted in her heart. And as he settled into his familiar routine, he reminded himself that true success was not about fame or praise, but about touching lives, one person at a time. His students, his family, his community, these were the anchors of his life. Tonight, as he reflected on the evening, Thomas felt a renewed commitment to the people who depended on him. The praise and recognition from the gala had been nice, but it was the simple life he had chosen, full of purpose and authenticity, that brought him the deepest fulfillment. For Sophia, however, the morning after the gala brought an unexpected reckoning. As she wandered through the opulent rooms of her luxurious home, she felt a hollowness she couldn't shake. What had once filled her with pride now seemed empty and meaningless. Thomas's words played on repeat in her mind, challenging everything she had come to believe about success and happiness. They forced her to confront memories she had buried, memories of a time when her life had been guided by genuine values, not wealth and status. Sophia realized that, over the years, she had grown cold and distant, pushing aside her kindness to survive in a world obsessed with power and appearances. But Thomas's quiet conviction had awakened something in her, reminding her of the person she used to be, someone who believed in the worth of every individual. Now, she couldn't ignore the growing desire to reclaim that part of herself. Restless and confused, Sophia reached out to friends, hoping for guidance. Yet, as she engaged with them, she quickly realized how shallow those connections truly were. Their conversations were little more than exchanges about the latest parties, shopping sprees, and social media posts. No one seemed interested in anything deeper. The longer she listened, the more isolated she felt. Thomas had opened her eyes to a different way of living, and the life she had once cherished now felt unbearably empty. As she wrestled with her thoughts, Sophia began to wonder if it was time for a change. Perhaps it was time to step away from the socialite scene and search for something more meaningful. Though she knew it would not be easy, the yearning for a life with purpose gnawed at her, urging her to take that first step towards something new. Acting on a sudden impulse, Sophia decided to return to her roots. She visited her childhood neighborhood. A small, tight-knit town where people greeted each other by name and helped one another without hesitation. As she walked through the familiar streets, a wave of nostalgia washed over her, mingled with a twinge of regret. She recalled the girl she used to be, kind-hearted, full of dreams, untouched by the relentless pursuit of status. As she continued to explore the town, a newfound clarity began to emerge. She realized how disconnected she had become from the things that once truly mattered. Lost in a world that valued appearances over sincerity, she finally understood how far she had strayed. For the first time, she felt ready to leave that superficial world behind and rediscover a life grounded in genuine connections, kindness, and meaning. While Sophia grappled with these newfound realizations, Thomas quietly continued the life he cherished, teaching and mentoring his students with unwavering patience and dedication. He was blissfully unaware of the profound influence he had sparked in Sophia. His focus remained firmly on the classroom and the lives he touched daily. For Thomas, every lesson, every small victory his students achieved was a testament to his purpose. The gala had been a rare detour, but it only reaffirmed where he truly belonged, among his students, where he could make a real impact. Content and at peace, he never imagined the ripple effect his words had set in motion. Meanwhile, Sophia, driven by a newfound sense of purpose, decided it was time to change her life. She began volunteering at a local charity supporting underprivileged families, a world far removed from her own. For the first time, she came face to face with the struggles of those who had so little yet lived with resilience and hope. The experience was both humbling and eye-opening, stirring a compassion within her that had long been buried beneath layers of socialite indifference. As Sophia immersed herself in this new reality, she came to grasp the deeper meaning behind Thomas's work. It wasn't about seeking recognition or accolades, it was about lifting others, even in the smallest ways, and making a difference where it truly mattered. These experiences left her feeling more fulfilled than any gala or luxury event ever had. For the first time, she felt truly connected to a world that extended beyond privilege and wealth. Volunteering taught Sophia the transformative power of empathy. Each story she heard, each challenge she witnessed, resonated deeply, reshaping her understanding of what it meant to be truly wealthy. It wasn't about accumulating riches or status. It was about giving, about using what you had to uplift others. With this new perspective, she began to imagine a different future for herself, one where her resources could serve a greater good rather than simply boosting her own image. Inspired and determined, Sophia reached out to the charity leaders. She offered not just financial support, but her time and skills, eager to expand initiatives, provide resources, and mentor those who needed guidance. What had begun as a seed planted by Thomas's quiet example had now blossomed into an unshakable resolve to lead a life of purpose, one filled with the kind of meaning she had been desperately searching for. Sophia felt an invigorating sense of purpose, as though she had finally discovered the path she was meant to walk. One evening, compelled by a deep gratitude, she decided to write Thomas a letter. Finding the right words wasn't easy. She wanted to express just how profoundly he had shifted her perspective. Her pride resisted the vulnerability of the gesture, yet she knew that taking this step was essential to embracing the new life she longed for. In her letter, she thanked him for his quiet wisdom and for challenging her to look beyond her narrow views. She confessed to her initial arrogance and prejudice, admitting how his words had sparked a longing for a life filled with meaning. "You helped me see myself, flaws and all, and for that, I am grateful beyond words." She wrote, her hand trembling as she signed her name. Sealing the envelope, she sent it off, hoping Thomas would understand the sincerity behind her words. In the days that followed, Sophia's life began to transform. She immersed herself in volunteer work, supporting projects focused on education, healthcare, and housing for underprivileged communities. Her days, once dominated by social events and status-driven engagements, were now filled with visits to shelters, schools, and community centers. She swapped her designer wardrobe for practical clothing, spending her evenings brainstorming new ways to help those in need. Sophia felt lighter, free from the burdens of status and expectations that once weighed her down. She found herself smiling more often, experiencing a genuine joy that no luxury or gala could ever provide. People who had once known her only as a glamorous socialite were taken aback by her transformation. She was no longer defined by opulence but by compassion and purpose. For the first time, she felt truly happy. Weeks later, Thomas was surprised to discover an elegant envelope in his mailbox. As he opened it, he read Sophia's letter with a soft smile, deeply touched by her words. He hadn't expected her to undergo such a profound change or to reach out, but he was glad to know that his words had left an impact. Moved by her sincerity, he decided to invite her to visit his town, hoping she could see firsthand how her newfound passion could make a difference in a community that needed it. Sophia accepted the invitation eagerly. Upon arrival, she was welcomed into a world completely different from the one she was used to. She toured the small, modest school where Thomas taught and met the children whose lives he had dedicated himself to improving. Their eyes sparkled with excitement as Thomas introduced her, and Sophia soon found herself captivated by their laughter, stories, and dreams. In that moment, she felt a deep sense of belonging, something she had never experienced in her former life of high society. As she spent more time with Thomas and the local community, her personal transformation became a source of inspiration for others. Old friends from her social circle began to notice the changes in her. Though many dismissed it as a passing phase, a few were curious enough to reach out. Some joined her in volunteering at the community center, while others helped at the school, discovering a new sense of fulfillment alongside her. Even James Harland, the influential businessman and mutual friend who had first introduced Thomas and Sophia, couldn't help but be moved by her dedication. Touched by her commitment, he pledged to match her contributions, creating a surge of support for the projects she was passionate about. Sophia's actions sparked a ripple effect, transforming not just her own life, but the lives of everyone she touched. Before long, Sophia began to dream of establishing her own charity, one focused on providing opportunities in education, healthcare, and personal growth for those most in need. She threw herself into planning, determined to build an organization that would embody the values she had rediscovered: compassion, humility, and the true power of giving back. Thomas had imparted a wisdom that stayed with her, and she felt compelled to carry it forward to ensure his lessons of kindness and empathy would ripple out to even more lives. Her charity blossomed into a beacon of hope, attracting support from people all over the city who believed in her vision. Each family helped, each success story stood as a testament to the profound change Thomas had ignited within her. Sophia had come to realize that wealth and influence held their greatest value when used selflessly. With every passing day, her commitment deepened. A year after the gala that had changed her life, she organized a major fundraising event for her charity. This time, she invited both the high-profile figures she once mingled with and the community she had come to serve. She requested Thomas to be the guest of honor, hoping his presence would remind everyone of the values that had inspired her transformation. When he arrived, still dressed in the same humble suit from their first meeting, the entire room went quiet. His reputation had grown, but it was his authenticity that commanded respect. As Thomas stepped onto the stage, Sophia watched with a heart full of gratitude. His words resonated through the hall, touching hearts with the same gentle sincerity that had changed her own life. By the end of the night, donations flowed in, far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Thomas's presence had reminded everyone of the enduring power of humility, kindness, and purpose. As the evening came to a close, Sophia couldn't help but feel that this night marked the culmination of a journey she could never have foreseen. Reflecting on her past, she saw how far she had come. Gone was the need for approval, the pressure to project a flawless image. In its place was a profound sense of purpose and a life grounded in values she now held dear. Her friendship with Thomas had altered the trajectory of her life, teaching her that true wealth was found not in material success, but in the connections we forge and the compassion we show. And as Thomas quietly returned to his simple life, Sophia felt a deep sense of peace. She knew, without a doubt, that because of him, she had discovered a legacy worth pursuing, a legacy built on kindness, humility, and the unwavering desire to make the world a better place.